Hello, welcome to another edition of the Bass Report. I'm Bryan, Bass reporting live here at the famous Blue Note Jazz Club here in New York City. Returning to his home roots of New York City by way of Jamaica, Queens, is Grammy Award-winning film composer, bassist, Marcus Miller. In a career spanning some 4 decades, Marcus Miller has played on some very important R&B and pop records, backing the likes of Aretha Franklin, Roberta Flack, Luther Vandross, Jarreau, as well as the great Bill Withers, just to name the many endless few. Now tonight here on the Pace Report, you're going to see highlights of his 2-week residency, which he did here at the Blue Note. And he's come full circle, and he showcases that with tributes to Miles Davis, as well as his dear friend, the great Luther Vandross. And he also brings out some very special guests. Tonight here on the Pace Report, I had a chance to sit down and break bread with him to talk about his session work here in New York City as a 17-year-old, as well as talk about some of the most important partnerships musically that he has been associated with by way of Luther Vandross, as well as the great David Sanborn, as well as Joe Sample. I am so honored to be sitting down with you, brother. Congratulations on these last 2 weeks.
Thank you.
It's been whirlwind for you musically, man. Going back to the origins. Tell me how this came about.
The Blue Note New York City Club they decided to, especially coming out of COVID, to make events, rather than just have acts coming in. Matter of fact, they started it before COVID, but they really intensified it. So, you got guys like Robert Glasper who'll come in and stay for a while and bring different people in. And it's interesting. So they called me and asked if I'd be interested in doing the same thing, right? And I said, you know what, I think it would be cool, so just thought of people that I would like to have, collaborate with me. So, I heard this brother named Leon Timbo on Instagram who was singing a Luther song, but flipped it in such a beautiful way, man, that we reached out to him and got him to come and perform with us. And so that was beautiful. And then I called the guys from the band the Miles band that I was in when Miles came out of retirement. And it was Mike Stern and Bill Evans and Bino Sinelu. And we just did like the stuff that we used to play with Miles, Wasn't the most famous band that Miles had, but I thought it'd just be nice for us, to get together. And
time out. You guys were famous. Come on, man. You guys charted some history with that band. Especially him coming out and playing to a new generation of musicians.
Right. But it wasn't Wayne Shorter and Tony Williams.
Oh.
but no, I'm not trying to downplay it. No, it was great, and proof of that was that it was sold out, man, for 3 nights. It was beautiful. Yeah. People were happy to see it, and they really enjoyed it, and the musicians enjoyed it. So that was beautiful. I had on Easter Sunday Jonathan Butler and Kirk Whalum, and they came in, and it was just fantastic. And then Lisa Fisher the next week, who's an incredible vocalist. We went to high school together, and we also worked with Luther Vandross, years ago. So we've got a connection, man. But we had never performed together, and that was just incredible. She just really blew people's minds, Then Letticy came in for a couple of nights and did her thing. Of course, everyone knows how fantastic she is. What else? Then I put together an all-star band with Marcus Gilmore, Charles Altura. He's a guitarist who's done a lot of work with Terrence Blanchard. He's a fantastic guitarist. Joe Lovano, tenor saxophonist, who's incredible. And and through the 2 weeks, my band were like the backbone of the things. I had Russell Gunn, fantastic trumpeter, on trumpet. I had Donald Hayes on saxophone. I had Julian Pollock on keyboards and Louis Cato on drums. So, the combination of everything was just beautiful. And tonight I got bass night.
Yeah.
Victor Wooten, Derek Hodge, and extra special guest, Mano Neon. So it's been a beautiful time, man. I've gone to the past, I've gone to the present, gone to the future. It's really nice.
This has been a homecoming, and I got to witness a little bit of everything, and I want to talk to you about the origins, Queens, in the 70s. Paint a picture of how you segued and were hungry, because during the 70s was a great time because a lot of recording studios were here, and you really got your feet wet by Ralph McDonald.
Yeah, like you said, I came out of Jamaica, Queens, born in Brooklyn, and lived in Brooklyn for 10 years with my family. When we were 10, we moved to Jamaica, Queens. That's where I really kind of got deep into music. My father's a musician, so I was already into it. But, when I started meeting other young musicians in Jamaica, that really kind of turned me on. But yeah, man, I went to LaGuardia School of Music and Art, and I majored in clarinet, right? So I started doing some professional gigs at the age of 16. I played with a flautist named Bobby Humphrey. She played the flute, and she was very popular at the time, signed to Blue Note Records. And at a certain point, she said, I'm going to the studio, and I'm going to have my album produced by Ralph McDonald. And I said, oh, wow. And I was already writing my little tunes, so I gave her a cassette with one of my songs, and she said she'd love to do it. And she played it for Ralph, and Ralph agreed that we should do it. And she said, can my bass player from my band play on the record? Now, usually, a lot of producers like to use studio musicians for the actual recording. and they can let the artist use her road band for the live gigs. But Ralph said, okay, I'm sure you can't mess this tune up too bad. It's his song. He knows how it goes. So I came in there, and man, it was Steve Gadd, Richard T., Eric Gale, and Anthony Jackson's playing bass. My God. So I'm like, man, I'm like 17 years old. I'm like, whoa. Ralph said, hey, Anthony, this young guy's going to play this next song. Anthony said, no problem. Anthony went to the control room and sat with the bass. I was like, this is crazy. But it was my song, so it was like, I couldn't mess it up. So I did it. No problem. A year later, same thing happened. Same exact thing happened. But this time, I wrote the song that had a bass solo in it. You know what I mean? So we did the song, and I cut it. And I'm playing a little bit more this time, And Ralph says, can you read music? I said, yeah. He said, man, tell me the truth. Because I'm getting ready to recommend you for these recording sessions and these jingles. Jingles was a big thing in New York, music for commercials, And I said, no, man, I'm a classical clarinetist. I got it, He said, okay, man. A month later, man, I got my first call. Within a month, I was working every day from 8 in the morning till midnight, doing studio sessions because we started with jingles. And then eventually the jingle musicians, when they got on their record dates, they would recommend, hey, if you need a bass player, this young kid we just did a jingle with, he can read and he's good, And so it just started snowballing, man. Next thing I know, I was a, full-time studio musician.
Thank you very much.
Marcus, I was talking to your wife a couple of weeks ago when I told her I wanted to do this piece. There were 3 areas that I really wanted to really acknowledge, and you did it with the Residency these last 2 weeks. The first one is your work with Grover Washington Jr. And the Wine Light record. That record was everywhere. When that record came out, and it's not just because Just the Two of Us was a meteoric hit record, but your bass playing and you were kind of feeling yourself as a musician and as a session musician. Tell me how that Wine Light project came about and give me some of your memories of that.
Well, again, it was Ralph McDonald. He was the producer on the Grover Washington record on Wine Light. So we'd already done one called Skylarkin, something like that. And so at this point, you know, we're pretty comfortable. You know, hey Marcus, we got another date. It's another Grover record. You know, be at the studio, and we cut the tracks. You know, it's so easy to play with Steve Gadd. You know, he's so steady and so you know, so musical. You know, like he doesn't play to impress you. He plays to make the music good. So we cut it, man. It was just like another session, you know. And Grover was, of course, playing his butt off, you know.
What's Grover like? What was he like as a person?
Just as cool as he could be, you know what I mean? Just lived in Philly, would drive up from Philly to New York to do the sessions and drive back the same day, you know what I mean? He was and just soulful as he could be, you know. And then Ralph comes up behind me on Broadway a couple of weeks later and puts headphones on me, right on Broadway, because that was like our neighborhood, Times Square, because that's where all the studios were. Put some headphones, and I said, "Oh man, this is Bill Withers, ain't it?" He goes, "Yeah, man." I said, "Is that us?" He said, "Yeah, it's a tune we cut 2 weeks ago." I said, "When'd you get Bill Withers?" He said, "I just called him in. He wrote lyrics to the song, and he wrote the verses, and he sang it." I said, "Man, this is fire," you know. And the next thing I know, man, that song was on the radio all day, all night. And what a hit song does is it exposes people to the album.
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden, people who might have got drawn in from Just the Two of Us got to hear "Let It Flow" and all the other cool songs on the album. So it was a pretty incredible thing.
That really, and there's another record I want to touch, a little sidebar. Tom Brown's debut record. You acting a fool on that record, man. And the musicians on that record too. Dave Grusin was the producer of that album, but did you ever in a million years think that that particular record would do very well for him, as well as put you also in another stratosphere as session musicians at the time?
Well, I thought it sounded great. I mean, Tom is a great trumpet player, and his trumpet playing on that Brown Sugar album is beautiful. I mean, his tone and everything. So I was sure that if people got a chance to hear it, that it would do well for Tom. In terms of them, like, noticing me, I didn't know, you know, I thought that I was playing appropriately for the record, you know what I mean, just to make the music good. So I didn't anticipate anything, but I was really glad that it got Tom out there. And then his next record that they did had Jamaica Funk on it, and then everything went, you know, crazy, you know what I mean. So I was very proud of him.
Love has truly been good to me. Not even one Saturday or minute have I had that you come my way. I hope you know I gladly go. Anywhere you take me, it's amazing to you. Follow you to the moon and the sky.
one of the most important Marcus Miller musical creations in development was your partnership with Luther Vandross. And I told your wife I miss Luther immensely. Luther is probably the #1 vocalist I've seen live, R&B, ever. I saw him when he did the 7-day run at the Joe in Detroit. I saw the second night, and In Vogue opened for him. And I saw a man who put words into emotions and emotions into love. And you guys wrote and produced some great songs. Tell me how that partnership got together.
Luther was a studio musician, studio background singer. So you would call Luther after you had your track, and maybe after the lead singer sang their vocal on the record. You know, background vocals are important. They kind of highlight certain parts of the song, certain lyrics, you know. And they'd call Luther and Luther would call a group of background musicians. He'd tell everybody what to sing, so he would hook your record up. And he was very famous for doing that in the studio work. So after we're finished cutting the track, I'm leaving, we'd always see Luther and the singers coming in to add their parts, you know. So I'm like 18, 19 years old. I'm always saying something smart, you know, like, man, don't mess up this track. We laid it down. Don't you mess it up with them background vocals. And he used to roll his eyes at me. But he knew I was a kid, you know what I mean? And he knew I was getting on a lot of records, you know. And then he had recommended me for Roberta Flack. Roberta Flack was touring, and Luther was singing with her. And so we go out on the weekends and do shows with Roberta Flack. And that's when I really got to kind of hang out with Luther. And he would start educating me on the art of singing. You know, a lot of singers just sing naturally well, but Luther was a student, so he would break down singing like musicians break down harmony. You know, we sit around and talk about chords, talk about rhythms and stuff like that, and Luther could break down singing like that.
One of his influences was the late Walter Jackson.
Oh yeah.
One of his favorite singers was Walter Jackson. And a sidebar, not to throw everything off, Walter Jackson had polio.
Oh wow.
And he couldn't, when he sang on crutches, and his voice was just as, I hear the voicings of Walter and I heard Luther. Tell me about writing with him, and also your relationship with him got you to produce Aretha Franklin's, he worked on Aretha Franklin's comeback record, Jump to It.
Yeah. So while we're with Roberta, he said, hey, I want to make a demo. I want to try to do my own thing. And I was like, hey man, you're doing pretty good already just as a background singer. He said, no, I got a sound in my head. So we cut a demo, which ended up being the first half of his Never Too Much album. And took him a while to get a deal. Eventually, though, he got one. And, you know, the record came out, man, Never Too Much was a smash. And then people heard House Is Not a Home, which is also on that album. And the same way, Never Too Much was a hit on the radio that brought everybody into the album. And then they heard House Is Not a Home, and once they heard that, it was over, you know, because it's just a masterpiece, you know. And Luther was interviewing, you know, doing interviews, and they said, who are your influences? You know, I love Donny Hathaway, I love Dionne Warwick, I love Aretha Franklin. And Clive Davis, who was the head of Arista Records, which was Aretha's label at the time, said, hey man, I see you're a fan of Aretha, how about producing Aretha Franklin? So Luther called me and said, look, we need some tracks for Aretha. So I sent him, you know, like a beat, you know, a track for him to listen to, and he listened to it, and he wrote a lyric and the melody, you know. And next thing I know, man, we're in the studio cutting for Aretha Franklin, you know. She didn't sing the song with us. Luther had her come in later. You know, he knew exactly what he wanted her to sing, you know. And he called me up and said, come on, pick you up. I'm going to pick you up. You know, he put me in his car and played me our track with Aretha singing on it, man. It was a great feeling.
Did you cut it in Detroit, or did you cut it here in New York?
The first album, which was Jump to It, we cut it in New York. But then the next one, Aretha wanted to do it more organically, so we wanted to do it together, and she doesn't like to fly, so we all went to Detroit at the old Motown studio, and we cut Get It Right, that album, in Detroit.
Luther and I actually were in Roberta's band together way back, and both of us, we got an incredible education just sitting there watching her. You know, a lot of singers sing all the notes, Roberta just sang the beautiful notes.
That's right. That's right.
She let the other ones out. Not everybody can do that. Lisa can do it. So we're gonna do a little tribute to Roberta Flack, okay? Is that all right? Yeah.
There's a term in the pantheon of R&B. You don't want Luther to Lutherize a song.
Yeah, he'll take your song from you. Yeah, exactly.
And make it,
Exactly.
what was the ingredients for him doing that? What made Luther put his stamp on his song?
Man, you know, it's hard to say that because it was just so organic, meaning there was no formula. You know, a lot of people tried to replicate that formula by just finding old classic songs and singing them again. But man, it wasn't that easy. First of all, he would connect to the lyric or connect to the melody, and then he would decide to change it, you know. Like when I first heard Anyone Who Had a Heart by Dionne Warwick, it was like, doom, anyone who had a heart, boom, boom, could look at me, right? And then Luther said, no, boom,
Anyone who had a heart, doom, doom.
Man, it was like, whoa.
And the guitar. Doom, 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 doom. Yeah.
He changed the whole vibe of the song because he was so connected to it from having listened to it for so long. that he said, man, if I ever did the song, this is how I would do it. And he had an ear for how to redo a song. He did that with House Is Not a Home, which was also a Dionne Warwick song. He did that with the Temptations. The sun is shining.
Yeah.
The Temptations was back to back. The sun is shining. You know, it had a nice little Motown groove.
Yeah.
Luther said, you know, slow that thing down so I can get some juice out of those lyrics. You know,
You know what
Stevie Wonder's Creeping.
Yeah, Creeping.
You know?
Creeping.
Yeah.
You know what my favorite Lutherized song was? I need to have you next to me.
Love Won't Let Me Wait.
Yeah. That's his. That's his.
guys go back over 30 years. What is it about Marcus as a producer, as well as a musician, that has kept him, one, in the forefront of just musicians, and also the respect level that he has?
Marcus is a student of music. That's what keeps him in the forefront of the business. He's a student in every way. He's a genius. He's a gifted genius. I mean, and he understands technology. He is humble, you know, and he's like a student. He wants to know more about, like, my culture, my music. What is it? How do you play the way you play, and what makes? That's why he wrote Tutu. You know, Mapuche is another song he wrote that when he was in. And I think Marcus is a student of music. That's what makes Marcus. I think that's what makes any musician a great musician. When you're a student of music, you're not just a person trying to, you know, play on stage, you know, just to be seen. But when you what people don't know about Marcus Miller is behind the scenes, he's like a professor. He's like a geek, you know. He understands the computers. If you sing out of tune, he's able to correct it. He'll correct it if he needs to correct it. So I've had the pleasure of actually not just knowing him, but he reciprocated when I first had Marcus on my record on Heal Our Land. He reciprocated and called me to play on his record, which is called Steven. That was Wayne Shorter and Sanborn, and oh my God, he had everybody on this album. Good night. Good night. And so he had everybody on his record. So, and I couldn't believe that he actually called me in London when I was living there and said, "Hey, I want you to play on this one track," you know. And so it just shows you that when you're a student, you're never out of date. You're out of touch. You're always relevant, you know. And that's what Marcus. Look at all the music tonight. I mean, he covered so many genres of music that it was, you know.
Last question. Marcus told me that you and Kirk got in the studio, this album was being mixed. Tell everybody about this
The album is mastered now. We did this record. Marcus produced my album. I convinced him when he went on my safari 3 years ago. He actually came with his wife and his friends, and he had probably the best time of his life on my safari. I took him to the prison cell where Nelson Mandela was. I gave him the keys and said, "Take the keys and open the cell." And he had a hell of a moment. That was a huge moment. And then he stayed, and we started the record in South Africa. And I think I'm really living my dream. You know, he's a dream come true for me to work with. And on top of it all, Stevie Wonder, my all-time hero, performed on my record as well. And I can't tell you what song it was, but Stevie Wonder's on it. Marcus produced it. It's Russell Ferrandi from Yellow Jackets. We wrote a song together, Peace and Shelter during the pandemic. And my wife is on it. She's incredible. And my daughter, and it's an incredible project. It really is.
There's a serious connect between you and Marcus.
Yes.
Tell everybody the very first time you guys met.
Yeah.
And talk about the legacy that you two and some of the other musicians that were on Luther's recordings.
Oh, wow, yeah. Well, you're right. The Luther connection was when I first met Marcus. And that was such a big deal. You know, our mutual friend, Nat Adderley Jr., kind of brought me to the party. You know, he told Marcus, he told Luther, like, I'm playing in this guy's band in Houston. His name is Kurt Whalum, and he's got something special. And you know, the fact that they took his word on it, because I mean, this is Nat Adderley, right? So, you know, I'm just grateful that they did, and I got a chance to hang out with both of them, with Luther and Marcus. But I mean, Marcus Miller is my avatar. You know, I feel like, you know, the things that I want to do in my life and career, aside from my calling, you know, but sometimes mingled in with my calling, are things that Marcus is doing so well on a global level. So, you know, I love hanging around him. You know, I like to sort of glean what it is that he does and how he does it, because, you know, it's real, and it's something I would love to be able to look back and say, well, yeah, I got some of that done as well.
What was it like recording and even doing some touring with Marcus and Luther? Because I was telling Brenda, Marcus's wife, last week that the three things that Marcus is always going to be remembered for: the movie scores, Luther Vandross, and David Sanborn, and even some of the session work in the early 80s. Yeah. What made those recordings and what makes them stand out now over 40 years later?
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, I'll give you two words. It's Miles Davis. Miles saw in Marcus, I just so admire this, man, that Miles could see in seed form what we now see has, you know, the word in French is s'épanouir, which means to blossom, you know, in all these other areas. But Miles heard that in Marcus's playing, and he saw that in the way that he thought, the way that he put ideas together. And so that was, you know, when Miles heard it, it just kind of, you know, the rest was history. You know, like when somebody like Miles, you know, affirms your gift like that, then everybody else has to listen. You think, okay, well, Miles said it, then I need to check him out. And then it just started to, you know, spread. His gift just is ubiquitous, man. I am, my feet hurt, so I'm gonna go get in the bed. But the brother is ubiquitous. That's the word.
another very important relationship musically. And I'm not gonna hold no punches. You and David Sanborn created some magic. Not only you created some magic, but you very well accompanied great saxophonists. And I go back with the Grover. Tell me the relationship between you and David, because the Straight to the Heart record it was kind of an apex for you, because one, you kind of got away from being a session musician, but you kind of went into the production thing, and David kind of went in a very different direction as well.
I was playing with Dave in the Saturday Night Live band. This is like
80?
79, 80, yeah. And it was a year after John Belushi passed for one season, and the next season, the year that Eddie Murphy showed up. Those were the 2 years I was there. And Sanborn was in the band. And so during the week, Sanborn would go out and do gigs, because by then we had to get back home to New York to do the Saturday Night Live show. So we do gigs on the weekdays, and I'm sending Dave my cassette songs, like I did with Bobby Humphrey. And he said, man, I want to do these tunes. I said, which ones? There's like 5 tunes on the cassette. He said, all of them.
Right.
I said, well, man, I was thinking about doing my own album. That's why I gave you the cassette, so you could tell me what you thought about them. But I eventually decided, more people are going to hear the music if I give them to David Sanborn. I can do my own thing a little later. And so, man, he said, look, I want the tunes to sound like your cassette. Who played on it? I said, it's all me. He said, well, get your instruments and bring them to the studio. He sent me a limo, man, and I just put my guitar and my bass and whatever other instruments I had, man, my keyboard, in the limo, man. I didn't even have cases for them. I just put them in the limo, and they drove me up there, man, and I cut like 5 songs for Voyeur. That was the name of the album.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning, man. He won a Grammy for one of the songs, man. And
then you did the As We Lay, That Rain on Christmas.
As We Speak.
As We Speak.
Exactly. Yeah, we did that, and then we just locked in, because I had the sound of his horn in my ear. So when I was writing, I knew exactly what it was going to sound like, and I knew exactly what would work for him. And, I probably pushed him towards a little bit more of a funky sound, you know what I mean, for a while, which really did well for him. But then when he was ready to expand, I was already in an expansive mode myself, so then we started expanding with more jazz influences and stuff like that. So we kind of grew together.
Tell my viewers what the role is as a record producer.
Record producer is like the director of a movie, right? Everybody sees the director going, cut, we can do that again, you know what I mean? He's the one who decides what the whole picture should look like. He's responsible for the production of the record. So the producer will work with the artist and supply whatever the artist doesn't do himself. For instance, if I'm working with Luther and he needs to communicate with musicians, I will talk in a language that the musicians understand. He'll say, look, I need it to be a little bit more chunky or something like that, and I'll translate that to the band. Nat Adderley did the same thing. And then when we're mixing, you want to help Luther make sure that all the instruments are represented well. The music sounds full, the music sounds beautiful, his voice is well represented, and we're making decisions like, is your voice too loud? Is your voice too soft? We don't want to be so loud that you don't enjoy the music behind it. You don't want to be so soft that people don't really get to hear you. So all those little things, man, the producer's responsible. Then when you finish with all the songs, which song comes first on the album? That used to be a big deal. Side one. What are we gonna do on side one? Okay, then they're gonna flip it over, the LP, they're gonna flip it over. What's the sequence on side two? And all those things are part of producing the album.
What was the first record Marcus Miller produced?
I think it was David Sanborn, Straight to the Heart.
That's my record.
It was a live record.
That's my record.
And David was like, I don't really need a producer. And Marcus knows all the music. He's the youngest guy in the band, but he's the one who's always saying, hey guys, let's try that again. So he said, he knew I was kind of doing it. I think it might have been before that, Lonnie Liston Smith, Dreams of Tomorrow. And it had a song called A Lonely Way to Be, which is a beautiful song, sung by Lonnie's brother Donald Smith, who just recently passed.
That's right, yeah.
But my first one with Dave was very important too, and that was Straight to the Heart. Live record, did very well for Dave. And from that point on, I was producing. And then, Luther was like, hey man, I need you to help me with some of these production responsibilities, because he was the producer of his album, So I would get in there and help him and be his ear when he's in the studio singing. And I say, that sounds beautiful. Or you might want to try that again. I know what you're looking for. I'm not judging, but I know what you like. You know what I mean? So you might want to try it again. So it was that kind of thing. And we had a great relationship, man, because I was like his little brother. You know what I mean? I was allowed to be a knucklehead, in the studio.
Right.
And in those days, we had a mixing board, and it wasn't like computerized. So what happened was, in order to mix it, if you wanted the violins to be louder at this point, you had to, while they're making a copy, you had to push the violins up. So, man, we had all these moves that we wanted to do while the thing was playing to get a perfect mix, right? Drums, okay, violin, push Luther's voice up there, pull down the tom-toms there. So it was a performance, And after the mix, we go, okay, how'd you do? Did you get all your moves? And the engineer, did you get all your moves? And I was a kid, so my job, because the board was big, man, so my job was move the bass drum up there and then run over and get the triangle over here, you know what I mean? I had my little moves, man. So we had fun, man. At the end, we go like, how'd you do? Yeah, man, no, I got mine. Did you get yours? Okay, let's listen to it back. And we listen and say, yeah, we got it.
The beautiful thing is that you also had a team. You had Nat Adderley Jr., you had Paulette
Genius.
McWilliams,
Yeah.
you had Lisa Fisher.
Mm-hmm.
You had some great musicians that were your supporting cast. Was that very instrumental in you as far as producing the records over time? You have certain people that you go to?
Oh, yes, absolutely. It was like they played a really important part. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like they were added. We knew who we were writing for. This is going to be Nat Adderley Jr., this is going to be Doc Powell, this is going to be Yogi Horton on drums, This is going to be, Luther knew his background singers. He knew the range of each of their voices. And he was like a casting director with his backgrounds, Cissy Houston, Whitney's mom would sing the top note. Tawatha would sing that note under her. Brenda White would sing that other note. Paulette would be on the bottom. If he needs a male voice, he pulls in his buddy Fonzie. He's pretty serious about it,
Another very, very important music friendship, the great Joe Sample. Now, I'm going to paint a picture for me. I think the records that Tommy LaPuma produced when he signed with Warner Brothers put Joe Sample in a very different stratosphere, commercially as well as in music. It's that Spellbound record. I said, man, this is Marcus Miller, boy, this dude. The opening track just sync line and hooks you, and then it takes you through different musical genres. It takes you through Al Jarreau. It takes you through Michael Franks. It takes you through Take Six.
Right.
There's even some Latin on here.
Yeah.
Tell me about working with Joe Sample.
Well, I was already a big fan of Joe's because I love two albums of his from the 70s, Rainbow Seeker and Carmel.
Yeah.
I love those albums,
Excuse
man.
me.
I used to listen to those albums all the time. And of course I listened to the Crusaders, Joe's group. Joe was a founding member of the Crusaders. So I was like a big fan. Tommy LaPuma, who was the producer at Warner Brothers, called me and said, hey man, Joe hasn't done an album in a long time and he's coming back on Warner Brothers, you got any tunes? So I wrote this tune, but man, just to sit there and listen to him play, man.
His touch.
His
touch. Yeah.
His touch is just outstanding, you know what I mean? And I was just so pleased to be able to contribute because, one thing, like, let's see, we cut that maybe in 86, right? So 10 years earlier, I was in my bedroom listening to the records, you know what I mean? And now I'm here contributing. It was incredible. And you know what, man? I worked with him. We became very close friends. Like, he had a cabin on the ski slope in Mammoth Mountain up in Northern Cal. And he would have me up there, me and Al Jarreau, because we'd be writing music. But Al wasn't waking up till 4 p.m. So Joe would wake me up at like 9. And we go skiing down the mountain, man, and just have a great time. He was a fantastic individual, you know what I mean? And I began working with Miles, you know what I mean, and writing stuff for Miles. And Miles didn't want any acoustic piano on his albums because to him it sounded old, and he was always trying to push forward and not go back to an old sound. But man, this one song I wrote called Amandla, I really wanted the piano, so I said, man, I'm gonna call Joe. And I said, Joe, put the piano on here, man. Miles is not here. It might not make the album, but just put it on there anyway, So he played, man. And when Miles came in, I said, I got a piano on Amanda, but I just want you to listen to it before you judge. And he goes, oh man, you got a nice touch. He heard that touch right away. And it's on the album, so I was very proud that I could get Joe on Miles's album.
You guys recorded some albums, Ashes to Ashes, Invitation. There's a couple. I mean,
Ashes to Ashes is one of my favorites.
Mine too.
Yeah.
Mine too.
Spellbound also.
Yeah, but let me tell you why I like the Ashes to Ashes. It's the whole album seems very laid back. It's not in your face.
Right.
It's more, I can drink a glass of wine and I can really have a good time, and you do. You do. And it's like you guys are having a lot of fun on that record too.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And we'd already done Spellbound, which was a very successful album, like you said. And Ashes to Ashes, but Joe was into this other thing, man. I mean, the name of the album is Ashes to Ashes. That's pretty dark, you know what I mean? But the music, that's where he was. And it's just a beautiful album, So those two are very special to me.
How did you segue into composer? Because I know this week your wife was telling me you were completing the music for a documentary on Harry Belafonte.
Sidney Poitier.
Sidney Poitier.
Although Harry's very much in this documentary,
right,
you know.
Right.
And towards the end of the 80s, I got a call from Reginald Hudlin. And Reginald Hudlin said, I just got out of film school. You know, at the end of film school for your senior thesis, you have to do a little short film. And he said, that short film that I did got picked up by a new movie house called New Line Cinema. And I'd like you to do, excuse me, New Line Cinema. And he said, I'd like you to do the music score. And I was like, I don't really do movie scores. He said, man, I've been a fan of your music for 10 years. You will do great. I'll send you the video cassette. That's what it was at the time. He said, just, you know, write music that you think is appropriate. So I did, man, and started writing, and I got my boy Lenny White to assist me, you know. And then he came in and listened. He said, man, what you're writing is great, but you have to make sure you don't cover up the dialogue. You know what I mean? You got to make sure that you support, you know. So I started treating the dialogue as the lead singer, right, and supporting the dialogue. And that was my first lesson, you know. And that was House Party, right? And House Party did very well, and then Reggie got a call to do Boomerang. And, you know, with directors, man, like, if you have a composer who's got your back, you know, you tend to stay with that guy. So Reggie said, hey, man, we're doing Boomerang. I did Boomerang. I did a bunch of Reggie's films, you know. The latest one I did was Marshall, the Thurgood Marshall story. But once my name got out there, other people started calling, too. So I was doing a lot of stuff. Two Can Play That Game, and This Christmas, and The Brothers, and a bunch of films, you know.
Marcus, does the role of producer, is it different from composer? Because you're scoring scenes, you're scoring a moment in a scene. It could be that big theatrical moment, could be like 3 minutes, or it could be like 30 seconds. How do you
sit with the director, who's like I said, he's the producer. I mean, in film world, the titles are different. The producer is usually the one who raises the money to get the film done.
Right.
But the director is the one who's trying to pull everything together to make the actual piece of art work. And so I sit with the director, I sit with Reggie, and he'll go, right here I need to feel this. Right here I need some tension because something's gonna happen, you know. Right here I need to do this, right here I need to do that. And it's very supportive, you know. He tells me what he wants me to do, and then I just try to find the music that makes it work. So it's a little different from producing, where the main focus is on the album.
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report, recording live here at the famous Blue Note Jazz Club here in New York City. I'd like to personally thank the incomparable Marcus Miller for his time. Also, I'd like to personally thank Mrs. Brenda Miller, his wife, for arranging my time with Marcus during this chaotic 2 weeks here at the Blue Note. Thank you again. And also, I'd like to personally thank the staff and management here at the Blue Note for these last 2 weeks for accommodating and helping me out as well. You guys are godsend. Thank you. People, please like, share, and subscribe to my videos and leave comments here on YouTube and Vimeo, as well as visit my website, thepacereport.com, for my weekly column, as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Until next time, peace.